Сайн байцгаана уу хүн үзэгчдээ. Өнөөдөр манай de facto нэвтрүүлгийн зочноор Монцемент компани Санхүү хариуцсан захирал ноён ЧАРЛИ Limboro оролцож байна.
ЧАРЛИ Limboro, Монцемент Билдинг Материалс компани Санхүү эрхэлсэн захирал. ЧАРЛИ Limboro нь Австрали улсын Квинсленд технологийн их сургууль, Chicago Booth School of Business их сургуулийг тус Санхүү эдийн засаг, нэгтлэн бодох бүртгэлээр суралцсан төгссөн. Олон улсын мэргэжсэн нэгтлэн бодогч Санхүү зэрэгтэй. Тэрээр 1991 оноос хойш олон улсын Chartered Accountant, Эдаб Алаб Electronics, Astra Graphia компаниудад Санхүү хөрөнгө оруулалтын менежерээр ажиллаж байсан ба 1998 оноос 2018 оны хооронд дэлхийн хамгийн том барилгын материалын үйлдвэрлэл, бизнес эрхлэгч, 80 улс оронд салбартай Lafarge Group, дэлхийн 61 оронд салбартай олон улсын даатгалын компанид Санхүү эрхэлсэн захирлаар тус томилогдсон ажиллаж байжээ.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
How long staying in Mongolia?
It's been 1 year already.
1 year.
Yes.
I saw your CV. You have been working in Cambodia. You are Australian. You have been working in Asia, Indonesia several times, which is originally your home country. Now you have been all the time working with finance in this industry, in particular, cement industry. How do you find cement industry today in this country?
Okay. When I first arrived here, what I saw that there are 4 cement plants in Mongolia today.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I look at the consumption of cement in Mongolia, it's kind of like you have an oversupply situation, which is an acute oversupply situation. So you have what we saw today, there was like 1.5 million tons of expected cement consumption, and while the potential production capacity of this 4 would amount to about 4.5 million tons. So you kind of have 3 times oversupply conditions.
Of course, there are many reasons what happened, but what's your take on that? Why is that so?
I think what happened was, if I went back to the history to understand that during the height of the commodity condition in I think it's early 2011-12, Mongolia experienced rapid and economic growth due to high commodity prices. So consumption at that time was around 3 million tons.
2012 or so.
11-12. Unfortunately, after that, the consumption went down, went into decline significantly due to the financial crisis that happened. So can the consumption come back? I think it can come back, but there needs to be a lot of support in terms of developments requires, because from what I see today, infrastructure is still lacking. Good so-called public housing is still in acute shortages. So yes, are there potential for Mongolia in terms of development, especially in the consumption of cement? It is. But there was maybe, from my point of view, there needs to be a systematic process of the government planning to make sure that this happens.
You, in Southeast Asia, Malaysia in particular, Indonesia now, all these countries are growing so fast, with that fast growth, phenomenal infrastructure, road in particular, highways. What do they have, except population, of course, demand? Do they have something that we don't have here? Is it planning, or what do you think?
Okay, I give you an example of, let's say, let's forget Malaysia and Indonesia, which is already, you can say it's considered as one of the Asian tigers economy. Let's look at Cambodia as an example, which is of a similar kind of size economy as Mongolia. What happened? I remember when I was there.
Which year?
I was there until 2008, from 2005 to 2008. So there was no cement plant in the country at all. the country development at that time relies on importation of cement from the neighboring countries like Vietnam and Thailand. And what we saw there, if you rely on your neighboring countries for such a critical raw material for your infrastructure development, you will face an issue whereby when the neighboring country requires this so-called raw material for their own consumption, you become a number two, not a priority. So sometimes I see there's a shortage of cement in that country. So, but today, if you look at where Cambodia has been, now I think if I'm not mistaken, they have something like 3 cement plants. And the overall, from nothing to overall production capacity is around 4 to 5 million tons, which is exceeding...
Here, as here.
It's actually much higher than here. Okay. Why? We come back again. There was already a government plan to continue development of the infrastructure because they knew that this is important to the country development. So there was a systematic support. They provide a lot of incentive, like tax incentive, tax holidays, to attract and to support this heavy industry investment in the country.
Here in Mongolia, there was a promise that the same promise, they will, for example, exclude customs tax for equipment coming for these plants. One is your company case, and that was this planning of the company, and today it is not done.
Exactly.
What happened? When and how? Tell us about the story.
Well, I don't understand, and I should not go into the politics of how the government makes that decision. But the initial, what I read, the initial investment, foreign direct investment law, which is promulgated by the parliament, is exactly what is required and done by other countries. And other countries actually followed through and did provide a lot of incentives, like tax holidays for 5 years, no import duties whatsoever, even VAT, no VAT for 5 years.
Monцемент is a joint venture, or it is what?
Monцement is a joint venture between Monpolymet and EBRD, which is a European government bank.
How many percent EBRD?
EBRD is currently holding 20%.
20%. So even with such a large, important financial institutions like EBRD having 20% of the property, joint venture, and the other is being Monpolymet, the law which promised the country for years to attract foreign direct investment are not implemented in this case. How much we talk about how big the equipment was, and then what was supposed to be the tax exemption, which is not happening.
Okay, the amount of tax exemption we should not. Okay, let's not look in isolation.
Okay,
let's look at the overall cement industry, and how you can say how competitive is the cement industry in Mongolia today. Okay, for example, the cost of investing into one cement plant in Mongolia, from my experience, is something like over 3 times what it would normally cost to invest in a similar size plant somewhere else. 3 times.
Why?
Okay, one of the there are a few main reasons. First of all, there was a lack of infrastructure. So if you invest in the cement plant, you need to build the relevant infrastructure such as electricity, power line, substations, railway connection, road, housings, and so on. Because normally cement plants are built in a remote location where nearby to the quarry. Okay, so that's first. Second, the cost of importation of all those heavy equipment. Normally you will get tax incentives. And in this case, unfortunately, it didn't transpire. It didn't happen. Okay, that at cost, you'll be looking at maybe around in the tens of millions of dollars, because those heavy equipments are not cheap. And third, there are actually a lack of, for example, a lack of local talent, knowledge. So it takes a lot of efforts to actually send some of these engineers overseas to be trained, and you need to hire experts to come in to train this. So those are why the cost of investment in Mongolia is relatively much higher compared to similar size investment in other countries.
And in spite of that cost burden, relatively 3 times than the average in the world, today, what is the capacity? How many people you employ, and how far is that from Ulaanbaatar?
Okay, there are, in total, the industry employs, I think it's around 2,000 over people. Okay, that's direct employment. And if you look at the indirect impact of this, you'll be looking at around maybe over 10,000 employment opportunities, business opportunities at the rural areas. So this cement business or plants actually is supporting the rural economy directly and indirectly, because you don't build this cement plant right in Ulaanbaatar.
Sure.
So you are actually helping the local economy to grow.
Location is where?
Monцement location is in near Gobi. It's in Urgun, Urgun-sum.
Urgun-sum
Yeah.
of Dornodaimak,
Dor-
right?
yeah.
Dornodaimak, which otherwise had not any kind of whatsoever
Nothing there, it's just
industry.
desert. Yeah.
Now it's a huge, total how many people you said?
Our Monцement itself, we have about 300 people working in the plant over there.
Okay, we talk about the 300 direct employment of
That's right.
local people mostly.
That's right.
And you are close, I understand, to your own raw materials.
Yes.
Quarries.
Correct.
What kind of materials are required for cement?
Okay, for cement, your major materials, you say like 80% or 85% of your major raw materials is actually limestone.
Limestone. And what else?
And then you have other additives like shells or clay. Yeah, so those are the main.
Those you are importing?
No, fortunately all that is local.
Wow, so you have 100% local raw materials.
Correct.
And yet the company has today a problem, because today the country has 3 times capacity than currently consuming. Yet the country can consume all the cement if there is properly planning.
Yes.
And because there's so much need of road in
Correct.
this vast country, right?
That's right.
Then what usually happens in absence of increasing or constant demand, there is usually a price war between suppliers. Is it the case?
Well, it is the case in Mongolia today. So you imagine when market is actually, your supply is 3 times over the demand. So everybody is fighting for the pie, for a small pie.
Which is happening in all around the world when in particular when you have overcapacity compared to the current consumption. Then there is a certain regulations, usually in all free market democracies. You cannot damp the price, right? You cannot have a cartel on prices.
Correct, yeah.
What is the situation in that sense?
In this situation, is that, for example, I mean, in many countries, when you talk about oversupply globally, normally you're looking at oversupply of only about 20-30% maximum. That's kind of already considered in our industry as acute. But in Mongolia case, we are beyond acute. We're at a terminal stage of oversupply. And yet, come back to this. Normally, as a good business practice, people who understand this business, they knew what are the costs. And you don't normally sell below your cost. Because if you sell below your cost, that means the business will not be sustainable going forward. Another word is you won't be able to have money to reinvest in maintaining the plant, to keep the plant operating at a good level. You won't have enough money to spend on training for the employees. So those are the major setbacks if we are looking at the current situation in Mongolia. Okay, what is the ideal price? Ideal price is you always got to have just the right margin that is sustainable for the industry. Okay, and which in this case, unfortunately in Mongolia, I'm not sure how long the whole industry might survive at this rate.
And if these industries, the industry therefore, if it is at the level of price dumping, then it may not be sustainable for all of them.
Maybe out of the four, I would say the three major local Mongolian owned might have a bleaker future. Why am I saying this? Because the fourth one is actually a wholly owned foreign cement plant, which belongs to a huge multinational cement plant, and this is a small for them. This is a small investment.
So we may end up three local, which is in Mongolia. Three local is Monцемент,
Hutul, and
Hutul.
Yeah,
those three may disappear. And the fourth one, which is Chinese multinational corporation company, it is just one of those plants of the corporation is here.
It's one out of few hundred plants they have.
Few hundreds.
Yes. Well, okay, just to share with you the Chinese plant. This Chinese plant belongs to the largest cement manufacturer in the world.
Number one in the world.
Number one in the world. Not in China, in the world.
Wow.
The total capacity of this group is 500 over million tons.
Wow, more than $500 million.
Million tons.
Capacity.
Yes.
Whoa. It looks like the things go in such a way that the Mongolian companies disappear, this company survive and will be monopoly, and then at the end, they can put like any price they want.
Yes. Or they can consolidate the other Mongolian companies and
either they buy them. Yeah.
Yes.
Ha.
So what can we do?
That's the question I want to ask.
Yes. What can we do? What should the government do? For me, the government should actually encourage and help the local cement industry to survive and to grow, not only to survive, but to grow, to become stronger, because this is critical for the development of this country going forward.
I know particular cement, how we call it, the bread of the economy.
Yes, it's the glue. It's actually for your, if you build anything without the glue, it won't stick, it won't stay.
And speaking about this glue, sticking, the sticking the materials, I understand the quality of specification or standards of cements are different. And let's talk so that industry people knows, but ordinary people understand what kind of quality we talk about and who is providing what quality. Let's talk.
Okay. All right. And
how do you measure that? Just very simple words.
Okay. Quality, there are a few types of quality. You know, in Mongolia today we have the 52.5, 42.5, and 32.5.
52.5.
52.5. 42.5. And then 32.5. This is actually, when we talk about that, that's actually the strength, the final strength of the cement.
Which is measured in which way?
That's a very technical term, unfortunately.
Technical, I see.
Yes.
Okay, but then just in a very simple way again, this 52.5 is stronger.
Yeah, okay. 52.5, I'll give, for example,
Yes,
the application.
For what? The application.
If you build an extremely, very high high rises, we're talking about like 30, 40 or 50
buildings,
50 rooms, towers, you need high strength because you need to sustain the strength because the weight of the building. Okay, and that application normally, like I said, it's really a specific use. Then we come to 42.5. 42.5 is a lot of people felt that this is generally good cement, good strong cement. And it's needed for, let's say, constructions and so on. But unfortunately, again, 42.5, you only need it if you really build something which is really requiring high strength. There's a lot of misunderstanding in the building industry is that people already used to the 42.5.
In this country?
It's not only in this country. A lot of education happens when we started in Southeast Asia in those days. It's the same thing. People are still fixated because people thought, okay, this was the only thing I'm familiar with when I grew up, because at that time that was the only cement they sold. But with the innovation of cement, of building materials, there are actually many types, and people have to understand the application of what you need it for. If, like for example, if you build a 3 or 4 or 5 stories building, you don't really need 42.5. You actually only need 32.5. The advantage of some of this 32.5 is, first of all, it's easier for workability. Because if you understand the cement a little bit, those which are higher hydraulic factors, it tends to dry out very fast. If you remember why a lot of housing sometimes you see crackings, it's because the cement as a hydraulic factor, it sucks a lot of water because when it dries up too fast. And without enough liquid water, it cracks. It doesn't mean it's weakened, it's just that on the surface you have a lot of cracking. 32.5 additional advantage it provides is it tends to dry up slower. So you can work with it a bit better.
I see. So mostly 32.5 has a liquid that dries out slower.
It's because of the particle, the materials that we use, the additives we use inside there. They're actually better for its...
There is a machine car that shoots cement very far.
Oh yeah, okay, yes.
So over the building.
Yes, correct, yeah.
Incredible. I have seen it last, only 10, 20 years.
That's right.
But those are, that shooting is which kind of cement?
Again, depends. I think today in Mongolia they use mostly 42.5. But it doesn't matter. You can shoot any one of those.
I see.
In that, because this is just purely a hydraulic pushing the cement up to the higher buildings.
And for example, this new airport, the airport runway, which cement is this?
I'm not sure about that, but I believe it was 42.5. But really, at the end of the day, if you use 32.5, it's just good. And you don't really need such a high. It's a bit of a waste, right? You only require something which is of this quality, and yet we're actually using something which is over. So it's
is it a price issue?
First of all, it's also price because 32.5 is cheaper.
Okay, let's say the 2.5% is 100%. Okay, the price 100 unit.
Yeah. Okay.
Then 42 would be.
Depends. I mean, I cannot tell you. Depends on the country by country basis.
Yeah, but
so normally you can say 42.5 will be about 20% more expensive.
120, let's say.
Yeah, and then maybe that one will be excessive, maybe 150. So 50.
150.
Yeah.
Okay. However, for example, OT. They will require, because the key issue for this underground mine at the depth of almost 2 kilometers, 1.5 to number one is safety.
Yes.
And the safety depends on the strength of the tunnel they are making. So the car moves inside. Huge car, 200 tons.
Yes.
Of cars, such a big thing, which is, and that is to move, and plus with full weight, can you imagine? Cargo, then what they do is, for example.
Okay, I think in OTKs, we're not just talking about pure cement in this case, maybe 52.5, 42.5, but it's actually, you have other additive chemicals which is needed.
Okay.
So it's not just pure like you just buy cement, you mix it and you just spray. It doesn't. You have to add chemicals to strengthen and to dry the cement quicker. Because they need that, because timing is an issue when you build a tunnel.
Quicker means in time terms?
In time terms of, for example, if it takes about, normally for cement, the full strength setting is about 28 days. And when you open a big underground mining with timing is an issue, you need it to strengthen, to give the final strength much faster. So you add a lot of chemicals in that.
Those should be expensive.
I think the cost of chemical will be outweigh the cement.
I see. Let's talk about the railway pillows, we call it.
Slippers,
Slippers, And now we have this, a company, two government owns, run always with loss. And there are cases where the slippers of the railways are big. It's a wooden one, made zillions years ago.
Yes.
Getting now completely wearing out, creating dangerous situations.
That's right.
So they need, whether they want or not, they need to replace for safety and security, customers, passengers, cargoes. They need to replace all of them with, we call it cement one.
Yes.
Beton one or cement?
Beton, they call it beton.
What that requires of those cements?
If you say what's the required, they can use 42.5 or they can use 32.5, because the process of that is actually the curing is more critical for this. Because final strength is roughly...
they bring the one which is already dried out, completely
Yeah,
dried,
correct. But the
right?
process of making that, you can use 32.5.
Do you know, by the way, even 32.5?
I think you can use 32.5.
Are you familiar with any capacity in the country of them making these slippers?
Not so familiar, but I know there was only one or two companies that making this.
Not their monopoly, I know. Anyway, but however, now the government is making, surprisingly, in two directions suddenly. One is 270 kilometers railway, the other is 450
kilometers. Yeah.
Total consumption of those cements, will it help your industry?
It will help for sure, but how much is really at the end of the day? Because when you talk about building 270 kilometers or 400, let's say together 800 kilometers, how long does it take? Because there will be a bottleneck in the production of these slippers. From my understanding, to produce the slippers, you need a high pressure process. So it's not just a matter of just as if we're laying out a normal concrete. It doesn't work like that.
Yes, high pressure process.
Yes, so that takes time, and then depends on the capacity of the current two producers that we have in the country. May not be enough. It won't be. I mean, for us, cement consumption in that production of slippers, because my understanding is that you have cement, you have sand, and you have many other things that added into that besides steel. So cement, I believe, is only a small part of the overall slippers production. It will help, yes, definitely. I'm not saying it doesn't. It will help.
Well, for not to have, you said the infrastructure, including railways, roads,
for sure.
highways.
Housing. Yes. Yeah. Housing is critical because we can see today there's a lot of shortage of housings, especially in Ulaanbaatar city.
So the final one, our conclusion is, if we finally plan properly, go with normal competition, which will lower the housing prices in the country, that these people who need house can afford, then there's plenty of needs for cement.
Yes.
Which all this, the way how we do, is blocking further production, more so of further consumption. And with the proper planning, I think these whole 4 plants can provide can use all the capacity in the country.
Should be easily.
Well, that's I want to talk about with you. You have been working in the industry for quite some time now, working in Mongolia. And this today interview probably gave a lot of food for thought for ordinary people to understand what it's all about. And I hope the particular employees of these 4 plants will have jobs, must have jobs down the road after the right planning. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. За хүн төлөвчтэй өнөөдөр манай дефакто нэвтрүүлгийн зочноор Монцемент компани Санхүү хариуцсан захирал ноён ЧАРЛИ Limboro оролцлоо. Баярлалаа.